As you start this course, I would recommend you spend some time looking at the Xamarin website, xamarin.com. Explore it, see what the resources are there. You're mostly going to be interested in the products. So Xamarin Platform is the product we're going to be using. That gives us access to iOS, Android, and Windows creation tools. And some of this will be redundant from what I talked about in the first video, but it's great to get it directly from the source here of Xamarin themselves. You'll see some testimonials. You'll see the advantages of using Xamarin. And to walk you through, we talked about in the first video shared projects versus portable class libraries versus Xamarin Forms. And in Xamarin Forms, we also have shared projects and portable class libraries. Let's talk about the pricing structure. There are 3 different products within Xamarin, or 3 different levels. One is the Indie level. You pay $25 a month. It gives you access to Xamarin Studio. It does not, however, give you access to integrating Xamarin with Visual Studio. I'll be using both, and if you want to do all 3 platforms at one time, you need to use Visual Studio. But you can install Xamarin Studio on the PC and Xamarin Studio on the Mac and be able to go between the 2 and create the 3 different platforms. The business license is $1,000 a year and does give you Visual Studio integration. And then there's an enterprise license for organizations where we're going to have multiple people working on the same project. And so things like an account manager and so forth, data security issues that come into play. That's all available in the enterprise version. So if you scroll down a little bit, they talk about special pricing, and they go down to frequently asked questions. There's a question here that's been asked of, what about academic pricing? And it says details can be found here. And so you click on that link. There's another link, apply for free Xamarin subscription. So you need to show them that you were enrolled in a institution of higher learning and pursuing a course of study that will give you a certificate or a degree. However, as a student at South Mountain Community College in this course, you get Xamarin free through our DreamSpark program, Microsoft DreamSpark. In about the 3rd week of the semester, you will get an email from E-Academy with an account and password for you to log into the DreamSpark program and download Visual Studio 2015 Professional or 2013 Professional and Microsoft DreamSpark and a bunch of other products if you want them. So that's going to be the best way to do that. Until then, until that 3rd week, if you're anxious to get going, you can download Visual Studio for 30-day license, 30-day trial, as well as Xamarin for 30-day trial. We, of course, also have these products available in our BE 152 Classroom Lab. Before you install Xamarin, I would highly recommend that you have Visual Studio installed on your PC first. And I'll be using Visual Studio 2013 as we start this course, and probably later on I'll be upgrading to Visual Studio 2015. I just haven't made that jump yet. But you can download Visual Studio 2015. Now, if you're coming from our CS 162 C# class, which is a prerequisite for this course, you already have Visual Studio. But in that course, you could use the Express Edition or the Community Edition of 2015, and those are free. The problem is Xamarin will not work with those free versions. You need the Visual Studio Professional version or higher. So you can get that on a 30-day free trial. You can get that as a free product through DreamSpark. I'd go ahead and if you don't have Visual Studio 2015, I'd go ahead and download that. You can get to Visual Studio 2013 here from the links, but you might as well go to 2015. You won't see a lot of differences between that and 2013. So I have that installed first. I'd also recommend going over to Android Studio, going over to developer.android.com, and you're going to download the Android Studio, which is also going to get you the Android SDK. So I'd install that first as well. We really need the Android SDK to work with Xamarin. Now Xamarin, I think, will install that in its own installation process. But if you're looking at doing mobile development, you might as well have Android Studio as well if you don't already have it. It will also install Java as well. On the Mac side, you're going to need to have Xcode running. So have Xcode installed, and then we'll install Android Studio on top of that. And when we develop things in Visual Studio, we will link our two computers together. It'll access our Mac if we're on the same network. And when we test things from Visual Studio, it will actually send the code to our Mac, build it in Xcode, and then run the simulator from the Mac. Or you can run it directly from your Mac onto a device, such as your own iPhone or own iPad. I'm going to jump back over to the Xamarin site. On the developers menu item, there are some tutorials here on getting started with Xamarin.iOS, Xamarin.android, and Xamarin Forms. And those would be worth taking a look at, maybe working through those tutorials. On the resources, there's also a blog. And this is a good thing to check occasionally. You might want to go back through as we start this course and look at some of the previous entries here. This particular one of the top 12 Xamarin blog posts of 2015 I think would be interesting as you start this course. There's also an FAQ of questions. And then there are webinars that you can watch. And I'd probably suggest maybe you start with a couple of these webinars that look interesting to you. There's one here on Go Mobile with C#, Visual Studio, and Xamarin. I think that'd be worth watching. The Xamarin Platform. Developing and designing native mobile apps in Xamarin Studio. So there's a bunch of these I think would be beneficial to you to watch to increase your background. There's some other resources out on the internet. One of those is Jesse Liberty's 52 Weeks of Xamarin. Jesse Liberty is a popular C# instructor on pluralsight.com, and he's also written a couple of Xamarin courses on Pluralsight. So if you want to join Pluralsight, there's another resource for you. But here in his blog, he has some free materials each week discussing various aspects of Xamarin. So week 1 begins with an introduction to Xamarin Forms. Now, when he wrote this, we were using Xamarin Forms 1.0. With Xamarin 4, we're now using Forms 2.0. And not a whole lot of difference, just a little more capability in Forms 2.0, some additional controls and so forth. So still worth reading through this. The Microsoft Virtual Academy also has a course on cross-platform development with Xamarin and Visual Studio. So another video approach to learning more about this product. Github is a code repository where you can share projects with other people. Xamarin has a channel here in GitHub, all kinds of samples here, including samples from our textbook by Charles Petzold. And you could probably go down to the bottom and go through these different pages and find his stuff, but it might be easier to simply change the address up here, and it's going to be Xamarin-Forms-Book-Preview 2, and here is the code samples from the textbook. If you're interested in creating games, two other products to be aware of. One is Coco Sharp for 2D game animation, and there's also Monogame. These are all tied into Xamarin as well using C#. And R.B. Whitaker has a series of tutorials on using Monogame. There's also a whole YouTube channel on Monogame, so you can search for that in YouTube. Don't forget to use YouTube and Google as two of your best friends as you work through the Xamarin approach to cross-platform development, and look for answers in both of those search engines. In the next video, we'll create our very first Xamarin Forms project.